welcome. We're going to get rolling at 7 o'clock. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy week to come in and listen to some things about your school and the future and what we've been working on to provide information for our Board of Education. My name is Galen Bolt. I'm your interim superintendent, and very thankful to have all of our Board of Education here tonight. Justin Beathy, we got Becky Plager, we've got Gail Hutt, we've got Teresa Garacki, Kim Wellensack, and Arlen Beathy. Thank you for being here. Some of you may have served on a Board of Education over the years in your time span. If you have, you know what kind of work that is and the important decisions that you are making, and we're very thankful that these 6 folks are serving their community, so thank you very much. Tonight we're going to talk about costs associated with several scenarios. We have with us Russ Coe. Russ is a consultant. Russ worked with the Fremont Public Schools for 20 years as the Director of Operations. He was in that district for 34 years. Russ has worked with countless number of engineers, professionals that are in the business, construction business and consulting business, to be able to provide accurate information about upgrades that we might be considering in all kinds of things, whether that's HVAC, lighting, some type of improvement in windows, the notion of what construction costs are currently. So you'll be hearing some of those numbers and you'll see some of those. The 2 handouts that you have are going to kind of go together. The white one that has the pros and cons is probably the best summary of the work that we've done. If you really want to dig into the weeds, however, and look at how we come up with some of the numbers, that spreadsheet, which is color-coded, is a document that you're going to want to maybe take a look at also. No matter what, if you have a question about one of the numbers, please let us know, and we'll do the best we can to come up with an answer for you. We scoured over this thing all last week, got to the meeting last night and found it had several errors on it. Thought we had every one of the errors corrected. Lori, I found one, and when we get to it, I'll point it out. I am the culprit for leaving out the cost of a couple of portables on scenario 4 or 5, one of those 2. So we'll point that out when we get to that. I want you to look at the screen right now, and I don't know if you can all see it. There's 4 questions on there. And when we're done with the evening, we're going to ask for your response to give us some information about how you feel regarding these 4 questions. So I want you to have them in your mind as you're thinking about the information that you receive. The 4 questions, the very first one: how much do the savings of moving to one site balance against maintaining sites in both Tecumseh and Cook? Answer by either circling 1 site or 2 sites. We're going to be looking at some numbers that would show if we diminished the use of the Cook site, there would be savings in maintenance, in personnel, in a few other things. And we actually have several scenarios in which those savings differ, and we'll point out why they differ. But at the end of the day, this will be an important question for the board to get feedback from you on. Do the savings balance out against the fact that we would be maintaining 2 sites? So 1 site or 2 sites. Then secondly, we've got kind of a range there that we're asking you to let us know if you would support, and this is a dollar amount. It's really impossible to provide you information about levies. Levies have so many things that associate with them. How long is the levy going to be? What's the valuation going to be at the time? Tonight is dedicated to giving you the costs associated with several different scenarios. So we're going to ask you to give us maybe a limit. I wouldn't support any bond. That's item A. You know what? I could support up to $5 million, up to $10 million, up to $15 million, and up to $20 million. So we'll ask you to give us some feedback on that one. Now, you're going to be getting information on 6 different scenarios. An example of a scenario is leave everything just the way we have it. A scenario might be, let's maintain 2 sites, keep a career academy here, but move all of the PK-12 education to the Tecumseh site. There are a variety of costs associated with that. Russ has done the hard work of finding out what those expected costs would be for upgrades and equipment. And the spreadsheet is the document that would show you the specifics of that. Once again, that white sheet's going to be the summary. And then finally, we're going to ask you question 3 and 4, which scenario makes the most sense? And then finally, question 4, which scenario makes the least sense? You'll understand what that is a little bit more when we get to each one of the scenarios. I guess I would also say that while each of these scenarios is based on specific things, there's a wide latitude of variation that we can do with each one of them. For example, you're going to hear a cost of a brand new elementary building. That cost can be around $8.5 million, or it can be around $13.5 million, depending on how big you make it. So any one of these scenarios can be altered some with some new decisions. You're going to find out that having a career academy, and we all want that. I mean, there's no doubt that we all want that. But you're going to see a figure in here for Career Academy equipment costs at $300,000. And quite frankly, that's probably low. So those things that are associated with the things that we want to do have costs. So that's what you're going to see tonight. I want to explain how this is going to work between these 2 documents. So look at, please, the document that's the pros and the cons. You're going to see scenario 1. Maintain all current facilities on 2 sites with utility upgrades. Expenses, $4,889,350. 5-year savings, $104,783. If you would now just grab that spreadsheet, what color is this one? Is it purple? Oh, I'm sorry, green. So look at the green spreadsheet, and that's the very first one you see. You'll see all of those items listed out. Replace classroom corridors with LED lighting in a high school, $430,000. That's a cost Russ gave us after looking what is expected to be paid for things like that. Replace classroom corridors with LED lighting at Cook. So there's a cost for that. Replace the $560,000. Replace classroom corridors with LED lighting at the Tecumseh Elementary, $255,000. One of the things that we know, we've got some classrooms and corridors that are fairly dark. And there is a real return on replacing, not only financially through the maintenance, but with learning, having lit spaces that are better than the darker spaces if you don't have the good new lighting. So if you go down all the way to the bottom, you'll see a total $4,889,350. That matches up with what you see on the summary with pros and cons. Okay? A little farther down, you see savings over 5 years, annual. Well, because we would be installing the HVAC and lighting upgrades, those would be anticipated savings in utilities. $20,957 each year. Over 5 years, $104,783. So you see the number $104,783. that is also a number that you see on the pros and cons. So we can go back and forth on any one of these scenarios to answer any specific question. But if we just look at the pros and cons, I think that gives us an opportunity to have discussion. And then when you see something that doesn't add up or just doesn't feel right, then we can go back and take a look, I think, at some of the details on that spreadsheet. So, scenario 1, that's maintaining everything we got right now. No moves, but we would be implementing upgrades. So you see the costs there. Look through those pros. Number 1, we wouldn't have to close the cook site. Upgrades would make the utility efficiencies better at both sites. We would still have complete access to our best facilities, where we're standing right now, in the gym and the classrooms that are at the cook site. Both on the north and south end. The central office upgrade is needed. I do want to talk about this. So if you go back to that spreadsheet on that preliminaries, you see at the bottom of that spreadsheet, replace portable office. We're at a point really right now where that office that we have, which is also classroom space for one of our special education classrooms, that has deteriorated to the point where we have some safety concerns. This district already eliminated a similar mobile unit that had mold in it. This unit that we have does not keep water out. We continually have water coming in, soaking the floor. It soaks the windows. It's typical for Lori to have a couple of towels and replace them. If we need to, sometimes she runs home and gets a new towel, because we've got a couple of them soaked up. And it's that way in the classroom as well. So we have some concerns, and we feel like we need to do something. In talking with Scott Wieskamp, who's the Director of Operations at Lincoln does a lot of these portables. And when they build a new portable, it's $115,000. It's $20,000 to hook it up. So we put in a number there, $135,000 for 2 portables, or for 1 portable. So in this scenario, we would just be replacing the one for the central office and the classroom that we have. So back to the pros and cons sheet. The cons on scenario 1, we would still have an inefficient staffing usage. We've got staffing in both places, and we drive back and forth. Inefficient transportation because of shuttles. So we would still be maintaining the shuttle operation that we have. Safety issues because we still have more students on the road. We still have staff development challenges because we have staff at 2 different places. And that was one of the things that the principals and our teachers said, you know what, it's so hard to get together to talk about learning issues because we got 4th and 5th grade up here, we got kindergarten through 3rd grade down there, high schools at one site, middle schools at another site, and there's a lot of things we'd like to do collaboratively. The facilities still have a 60 to 90 year look and feel. We still have major repair issues with older facilities. Those things don't go away. The central office, if you buy that thing, that could possibly be an added expense that you wouldn't need in a couple years, kind of depending on what you want to do with any renovations and building. And of course, one of the cons is the costs of all upgrades, renovations, and new construction. Okay, so for scenario 1, what questions do you have? And if you don't have any, no worries. We can come back to any of these things at any point. I would say let's move on to scenario 2 because we'll be getting into more of the things. But you understand how this works now. On those upgrades are included all the way through in every one of the scenarios until we get to the place where we're building a brand new elementary. Then the upgrades to the elementary go away, and we're just talking about what the costs are associated with new construction. Okay, scenario 2. This one, we would move all PK-12 education to Tecumseh, and we would maintain the Cook site for a career academy concept. Now, to do that, you have to remodel back here on that construction lab, and you got to remodel on the welding lab. And then if you're going to do, and we've got costs figured in for this, for the HVAC and electricity, we would use the old gymnasium. When we brought the SCC people down to look at that old gymnasium, they thought, wow, what a great lab that would be. But there's a fairly significant cost associated with renovating or new construction to turn that into a lab. So as you look at the expenses, they've gone up to $6,072,132. If you look at that savings, that goes up to $1,867,000 over 5 years. And the reason that goes up is because you're reducing a lot of maintenance here at Cook. I mean, you'd still have to use maintenance because we would be using the gymnasium, and you would still have maintenance out here in the shop areas. But it would be reduced from what the normal associated maintenance costs with Cook would be. If we do that, we would reduce one administrator, and we would also reduce probably one support staff. So that in itself, I think we figured at $158,000 by the time you throw in salary and benefits. And then you throw in the upgrades, the savings and maintenance because you upgraded your equipment. And you come up with those numbers of savings, $1,867,445 over 5 years. Let's look at the pros on that. First of all, the savings realized through transportation, utilities, and maintenance and staff reduction. All those things become smaller. You have transportation efficiency improved. The staff usage efficiency is improved. Staff development and collaboration opportunities are improved. Repair costs at Cook are reduced. We would still have a facility at Cook operating, but those repairs would be reduced. Renovated Career Academy adds to enhanced future programming. Again, the central office upgrade and additional classroom space is provided. In this scenario, we put in 2 portables. Because if you move all the students, PK-12, to the Tecumseh site, now you got to find the space to have those classes. So that you'll hear as the negative part of that here in a second. Another pro for that is middle school, high school, and elementary opportunities for student contact, support, and learning are enhanced. When you get all the kids on one site, you have opportunities to do some things with your high school kids working with middle school kids or elementary kids that you don't have when you have 2 different sites, and you can't have access to that together. So we would have the ability to do more of those things. So you've got a Spanish program, and you've got some high school kids that are pretty good in Spanish, but you got a middle school program you want to get going a little bit better, and those students might be able to help some of those middle school students. Can't do that right now with 2 sites. Let's look at the cons. We still have transportation needs for sports and career academy shuttles. So if you keep an academy here, you're still going to have to shuttle those career academy kids. And you're still got sports shuttles that you have. Moving all students to 2 existing buildings at Tecumseh Site has challenges. That's what I was just talking about. The notion that you have some space issues about trying to find enough classroom space. You have some potential issues that you might have to reduce programming. For example, right now we have a chemistry class, and I think we have an advanced chemistry class. We have some advanced courses. We might have to only offer 1 of those as opposed to two of them. And then that's something that I think schools our size do once in a while when they have to. Another con would be maintenance is reduced at Cook but not eliminated. We would still be using facility here. likely staff additions necessary to teach courses. So what that means, if you have a career academy here, you're going to have somebody teach it. Well, we could use some of our staff from the Tecumseh site, but when you do that, you are taking away opportunities for, let's say, a middle school program in welding that you probably need to create those skills that are necessary for the advanced program, which you find at the academy. Well, the scheduling of the current staff doing both of those would have some real difficulties. So we would believe that we're probably looking at adding at least one teacher to be able to staff that. Another thing, lack of administrative supervision adding to safety concerns. So we reduced to 3 administrators, but what do you have up here? You've got the teacher and the kids. You don't really have access to an administrator to be able to be on site. Another con, central office additions could be an added expense that might not be needed in future years. And then, of course, the cost of all upgrades, renovations, and new construction. Okay, questions about scenario 2? Yes? That's right. In scenario 2, it would be.
And you would still have to transport the students for welding and construction to class here?
Yes. Yes. So we left in, oh, I'm sorry. Could you with the microphone, and again, we're broadcasting at home, so we want anybody to be able to hear what the comments are. So if you would say that again with your, thank you.
So the classrooms in the Cook site would be unused, and then we would have to transport the students who are taking construction and welding to the Cook site and back again.
Yes.
And you would also have to transport the kids who were using this gym for practice.
Yes, the gym would still be used for practice. I guess we'd have to decide what we were going to do with wrestling in this scenario. That is renovated, so we'd have to find a place at the Tecumseh site for wrestling practice. But yes, the classrooms that you have here would be unused.
Might be a good place for an administrative office.
Could be. The comment was could use it possibly for administrative offices. Yes, question.
What is the average class size now when it comes to that overall the grades?
What is the average class size? In the high school, Rick, what is it?
Well, we have about 144 students, so in the high 30s.
I would say, you mean per grade? You know what, let's do this so we can maybe have this be... Here's enrollment. This begins in 2009 and 10, and let me blow that up just a little bit. And we'll start with the elementary. Okay, you can see that was 2009 and 10, and sorry, Marcus. PK is pre-kindergarten. So starting in kindergarten, you have 37 students and then 33. So you see at the bottom for elementary the totals. The totals in 2009 was 266, but that includes pre-kindergarten. This year, 265. So there's a little bit of a roller coaster up and down throughout the years. But for the most part, we are almost exactly where we were 10 years ago. In the middle school, we were at 122 in 2009. We're at 114 right now, so we're down a little bit. but those numbers have been up as high as 125. They've been as low as 104, but in general, pretty close to where we were. And in the high school, 2009, we were 140. Right now, we are at 144. So in general, it stayed pretty flat. There would be up and down years. John, you had some interesting stuff prior to the consolidation. Consolidation was in 2007. So obviously now this would be after 2009. Actually, before we consolidated, the numbers for both Tecumseh and Nemaha Valley had been dropping for a couple years. And then once they merged, obviously we had a nice number there. So this gives you an idea about what happened from 2009 on. Okay, any other questions regarding attendance? Let's go back to that sheet then, the pros and cons sheet. Any questions on scenario 2? Other questions on scenario 2? Let's go to scenario 3. We can come back to any one of these that you want. Scenario 3, this is move all PK-12 education to Tecumseh Site, including all career academy concepts. There's a welding lab and a construction lab in Tecumseh also. It would not meet the standards of Southeast Community College for the career academy aspect, so we could give dual credit, but same kind of cost for renovations either at Cook or at Tecumseh. So the expenses on scenario 3, $5,666,850. And what do we got going here? Oh, okay. And the 5-year savings is higher, $2,132,900. And if you look at why, it's because we've moved everything now there, including Career Academy. So we have greatly reduced our maintenance expenses. We've greatly reduced our shuttling back and forth. We still have a sports shuttle that we have to use for our after-school kids using this gym. But they're still greatly reduced. So that's a 2.1 million savings by going to one site over 5 years. Okay, let's look at the pros and cons. The pros. The savings realized through transportation utilized in staff reduction, that saving is greater when you do that. Transportation efficiency is improved. Staff usage efficiency is improved. Actually, all of those things that were pros before are still pros. The added one we have, the Career Academy concept can be fully implemented in the existing high school. And there are renovation costs that are in there for that. Shared equipment allows for the development of academy skills at the middle school level. Once again, you've got the opportunities for student contact. You've got all administration on the same site. So you've got the supervision thing worked much better here. Okay, the cons. Let's go take a look at these. Oh, we're not done with the safety concerns are reduced. We got less kids on the road. We don't have as many kids in shuttles. So we're reducing some of those safety concerns. Improved security at existing high school and elementary. Additional staff not necessary through the use of current staff. So that doesn't, I mean, if you go to one site now, you're not going to be hiring additional folks. You're going to just have to make your staffing work with who you have. This scenario, scenario 3, when you incorporate the upgrades, and let's go back and look at that spreadsheet, because I want to make sure that's included in here. Preliminary 3, and move all to Tecumseh. If you look in scenario 3 on the spreadsheet, the line items, there is an item in there, renovation of high school and existing elementary. So when you renovate that existing elementary, you can turn that auditorium into a very good auditorium with equipment upgrades, with fabric upgrades, with the things that you would want in a new auditorium. You're not going to be building a new auditorium, but you would be able to upgrade with equipment. And not only that, if you would build something later, the equipment you have in that auditorium, you can use that somewhere else. So scenario 3 includes a renovated elementary and high school so that you can, and that's what that 1.1975 is for. So that's the added expense, and again, it's $5,666,850. And you see the savings there, 5 years, $2,132,900. So back to the pros and cons. We still have transportation needed for the sports shuttles. We have reduced the cook maintenance, but we haven't eliminated it because we're still using the gym. Moving all students to 2 existing buildings has some challenges in space and programming. So there's still some things here that, that were challenges before. Wrestling would need to be in the elementary auditorium. Now, I do remember when I was here in the mid-'80s, we had wrestling in the lunchroom of the high school. So, I guess that could be a possibility too, but none of the upgrades here would include any upgrade for wrestling facilities. Okay, questions on scenario 3? Well, let's move to scenario 4. Scenario 4, and as you go on, and of course now you're going to see some rising costs. You are building a new elementary. You're renovating the current elementary into a middle school. You are renovating the high school and incorporating all upgrades. So what we have right now at the Tecumseh site as the elementary, that would become a middle school. You'd renovate the high school. You'd build a new elementary on the east side of the football field. So if you go to the spreadsheet now and you look at scenario 4, this is the new elementary. You still have to include all the upgrades in the high school and at elementary, which is becoming the middle school, because you're still using those things. So many of those top items are still the same, but where you start, and by the way, we have $300,000 in there for equipment for career academies. And as I said before, any one of those items, we might decide, gosh, we can't afford a career academy concept. So you'd have to eliminate those renovations of those things. Then you don't have the opportunity for the dual credit stuff. You can still teach welding and construction, but you're not going to be able to connect for the dual credit opportunities. So there is flexibility within each one of these scenarios. But I want you to look down at the item build large 54,000 square foot elementary, $13,578,000. That is the maximum size that Russ has found that would suit us. That comes with a really good-sized gym. Russ, do you want to talk about that a little bit? That the maximum versus the minimum here on those elementaries?
Working with architects from Lincoln and Omaha, they've set classroom standards for certain size classrooms, and this would be having adequate size so that if your community would grow and it would need 24 students per classroom, that it would be that way. It would be the large classrooms just like in Lincoln, Omaha. It would have the big commons areas, the large cafeteria areas. so that you would be able to serve one big lunch instead of maybe 2 or 3, and a large gym, just like Dr. Bolt said. So it's giving that maximum that you just would have one really big elementary there, so that you would not have to worry about expansion if your community grew, or if you would want those really large classrooms. So it's just built off of Lincoln or an Omaha school. And then that small would be for a small, really small elementary in a small community. And it's adequate. It would fit the needs of what your current enrollment is. But then as your community grows, it would need to also grow. So there may be some additions. So I gave you the range of both. And I wanted to give you the small and wanted to give you the large. So that's how I derived those numbers, and I did that with 2 architectural firms, and they both conferred that, yep, you can do it between that number and that number. So that's how I came up with those numbers for you.
Thanks, Russ.
You bet.
So you throw in, and again, we have renovation so that you would have a nice auditorium in that renovated elementary, which is going to become the middle school. So all those numbers come together, and this is where you see a different number. Lori, I didn't catch. On the spreadsheet, you've got $18,985,600, but I did not include the 2 portables. And renovation did not include adding classroom space. So there is a pretty good chance that, hang on, this is number 4. So this is the current middle school, so we find a spot for the classroom. We don't use those. So the mistake is not on the spreadsheet. The mistake is in the summary. Please write in on scenario 4 in the summary the total $18,985,600. So that is the correct number on your pros and cons. $18,985,600. That's where we got showing $19,245,000. So that should be reduced by that 260. Okay, pros and cons. A huge pro. You have a beautiful new state-of-the-art elementary, adding to efficiencies and aesthetics. This scenario best meets the current needs of programming and facilities with the quickest span of time. The savings realized through transportation, utilities, and staff reduction. Remember, we've moved everything now to the Tecumseh site. There is no longer the sports need for the Cook gym, because we have a nice gym that we would be building on the elementary. Once again, whatever we would want to try to do with this gym, it would still be here. I mean, it would still be available unless we found a buyer, unless we found someone that was able to use the facility. But transportation shuttles eliminated. The staff usage efficiency is improved. All those things. The repair costs at Cook are eliminated with the new facility. Maintenance costs eliminated. Now, the only thing is, we eliminate maintenance costs at Cook, but we've got them in the new elementary now. So you can't figure that as a savings. So that's why on scenario number 4, you see the savings goes down, because we have a new building now that we have to maintain. It's about the same square footage, so we just decided let's don't put any savings for maintenance or utilities in scenario 4. The rest of those were the same types of pros that were listed in previous scenarios. The cons, the bad side. The Cook site is closed, except for the gym area, which would still need maintenance attention. Now, once again, we don't believe that we would need to use the Cook gym because of the nice new gym you'd have in that elementary. So we would be able to, we would have to have those same practice things. Now, obviously, there are some still potential pros about keeping a third gym. You don't have to go early and late practices. Maybe you don't have to go reduce a before school practice once in a while. I mean, there would be things that we would consider still using the Cook gym. But we believe that with a new elementary and a really nice gym there, we would be able to do the things we're doing now in our sports practices. Still have the wrestling issue, using the elementary auditorium for that. Costs of all upgrades, obviously, and you still have, let's see, we got rid of the central office and classrooms and portables, didn't you? So that con should be out of there, that last one, because we have now taken care of that. Scenario 4, questions. Yes, microphone.
My first question is, what would happen to the Cook site? Are you going to let it fall down? These people in this community spent a lot of money building it.
Question is, what are we going to do with the Cook facility? Would we let it fall down? That's the last thing we would want to do. If we get a clear indication that the savings that are realized by moving to one site, that's what makes the most sense, then we would have to go on a pretty diligent search of finding a use for this. Now, I've already talked to our education service unit. That's in Auburn right now. They've got facilities, and quite frankly, they did not feel that that was something they would take advantage of. I've talked to leadership at Southeast Community College to see if they would be interested in buying this building and having programs like we were talking about having. The problem at Southeast Community College, they have already done a major outreach with learning centers in Plattsmouth and Nebraska City, Falls City. There's 3 others, so they aren't interested in that either. There are a couple of other scenarios, and I don't want to, start saying, well, we're going to do this and do that. The first thing we have to have is a clear indication that moving to one site is the right thing to do. But the question remains, what do you do then with this facility? Now, you're right. There was a lot of money that was put into this. Those debts are paid off. So in terms of the debt on the building, there is no debt now. So this is going back to the question number 1. The savings that are realized by going to one site, does that balance outweigh maintaining 2 sites? So if you are believing that, we just can't let go of the Cook site, then you're going to choose maintain 2 sites. If you believe that the savings in some of those scenarios, which is about $2.1 million over 5 years, if that makes more sense, then you would choose one site. Other questions on scenario 4? Yes, we got down here. Please wait for the microphone to come.
Have you done any kind of projection on the students you're going to lose if you go to one site? When you've got maybe not a lot, but a significant amount of people in Talmadge that probably are not going to be interested when they've got Johnson Brock right down the road, that are not going to do that. And how many of your Cook people are you going to lose? Just for practicality purposes, have you looked at that?
No, we haven't. And we would take any help that you might have, or anybody, about how to figure that, how many we would lose. The notion that we could be losing some students, yeah, we understand that. The fact that I think what we're trying to do is to improve our facility, add programming that would be very attractive to come to Johnson County Central. I mean, that's the obvious thing that we're trying to do. But we can't just stick our head in the sand and say, well, there ain't going to be some folks that won't go for that. So you would have some folks probably, and that is an individual decision. That's an individual decision.
I would take a survey. I mean, just send out a survey. I mean, you've got all the addresses, and actually ask every single person that's in the school district. Instead of meetings like this, where people can't always come and they can't get here, actually poll your constituents and say, if this is what we did, would you stay, would you go?
Board of Education, that's something that we can maybe talk about, if that's something that makes sense. Thank you. Yes, question up here. Wait for the microphone, please.
You had mentioned that this building or the project that we did about 20 years ago, that's going to be paid, that's paid off.
Yes.
So in the scenarios where we close this one down and we build new, and I see that there's the savings and the expenses, but somewhere in there, I mean, if this is debt-free, then the expense to upgrade this is a lot smaller than what it is to build. Where's the loan? I mean, as far as the expense for the constituents for paying for all of that new construction versus just redoing some of the areas here.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow exactly what the question was.
We'll be going into a new bond, and so the cost to all of us here
Yes.
is going to be greater. When you're looking at the savings, there's savings truly in just what's being done to upgrade or remodel or build, but the financial side.
Yes. All right, so the question is about savings, that is that going to be good enough, because we could upgrade here and still maintain this. And that would be back to your scenario one, where we would keep this. In that scenario one, you just don't maintain, you don't get the benefit of reduced maintenance. You have an old building in the main part over here. I mean, you got a new one here that really is as good as we have. But you have a 1959 building out here that would need roof work. The projection on just replacing that roof that we have is $550,000. Did not include that in here. We are going to be spending $250,000 this year on replacing the roof, not in this gym, but in just outside the classrooms over here and that run over there. That's $250,000. So that's the kind of decisions that we have to make. Does it make sense to keep doing things at Cook, or just say we're not going to put any more money into it and we're going to upgrade and renovate at one site? It would do everybody well, I think, on your way out. The picture of the district map that was in the door as you kind of come through. Nick Weber's sociology class made that, and they did a study in which they looked where every family that has a student in school in Johnson County Central. And the pins that you see associated there show you where the conglomerate of folks are. And without question, you have a very large number of families that are in Tecumseh. You've got scattered out different areas, some in Cook, obviously, some in Elk Creek, some in Talmadge, some in Burr, but the very largest majority is in Tecumseh. So the notion of what's the best place to go if you go to one site? The popular thinking is that would be the Tecumseh site, because that's where most of your folks are. That's where your football field is. That's where a brand new, beautiful track is. But all those other things that come in with the image of having a really nice facility that you're not using, that's the hard work, I think, of what is ahead for our Board of Education, and then, of course, for our community when it comes to decide what can we do to best support our kids. And I can't emphasize that enough. These discussions have got to be about how we can best support our kids. Okay, another question up here.
If an option is to go to the one site and then there's nothing that this will be used for, the cost, like if down the road you're considering demolishing it or whatever, what type of costs are there involved with that? Is that in this proposal?
No, it's not.
It's not, because at this point, I would really need a lot of time to get a contractor out here to see how much asbestos is in the old building and where does this all get hauled to. Some could go to the county, but I think it'd be 40 miles away. And to get a contractor right now with the flood, it's going to be difficult. And I don't want to just throw a number out there right now. So the numbers have really changed because of the flooding. And I'd like to have a little bit of time because we haven't figured that. I believe there's a use for this building. I really do. With the health and wellness craze that's on, there's nothing around this area like a YMCA. And if you study what's going on in our world for basketball and indoor sports, indoor recreation is huge.
I know that you can't get a YMCA in
No,
there.
oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there is no place very close to have indoor health and wellness for walking track or for basketball or for any of those things. I mean, what's the closest place that you can go do that other than a school? Yeah, that's what I was saying. You don't have a Y. And like in Omaha and Lincoln, they've got all those little health and physical, I don't go to them, as you can tell, but a lot of people spend a lot of money just to be able to come into a facility like this and shoot baskets or do aerobics or go lift weights. And I think that this building may have some use for someone to either purchase, or a community may say that's what they want to do. And I've seen communities that have built these for their community and had a membership fee that just to pay for the utilities, and then the community got to use it. So,
I created a wellness center, and it's hard to make it go in a small community. And that was a community of 7,000 people. Okay. So it's pretty hard to.
Yeah, and my dad lives in a community of 3,500, and they're making it go really well. So it just depends. I don't have an answer. Yeah, it's here. It's something that somebody should be able to use, you would think. But I think we would search hard to find some use for it.
There's no doubt that's going to be one of the big things that's on everyone's mind, what to do with this facility. It's safe to say right now we don't have a good answer for that. But it is also safe to say we would do whatever we could to try to find something out there. And those are just difficult kinds of tasks to do. Okay, how about we move on to scenario 5? We can come back to any one of these that you want. Scenario 5, this is building a new elementary, renovating a current elementary into the middle school, renovating the high school, incorporating upgrades, and also building a new addition between the buildings. So, this new addition between the buildings, that would include a competition gym. It would include additional classroom space so that now middle school would have science labs that they sorely need. It would incorporate all of the best kinds of things that new construction could afford while still renovating that elementary school. So you still have an older building that you've renovated, but you have really some of the nicest things for high school and middle school, in addition to the new elementary for elementary kids. The cost there, $21,695,350. 5 years savings, $1,179,000. Again, that savings going down, and you know what I identified, the reduction in staff that we would realize immediately. We would go from 4 to 3 administrators and 1 support staff. Well, folks, there would be more savings in staff as you go along, because as you are at one site, You can just consolidate some positions. Now, the fact of the matter is, the board's already made the decision there will be no reduction in force. So unless somebody leaves, they wouldn't be forced out. Somebody retires, yeah, now we would look at programming to consolidate. So the savings actually could be much greater than what we are listing. And until you get to one site, you can't really have the opportunity for those kinds of savings. Something else that we didn't identify as savings. When you build new, your repair costs go down. They better go down. When you build new, you got the type of opportunity to put in something like a geothermal well for your heating and cooling, which you don't when you're doing the renovation. I mean, you just have so many other opportunities available. So those aren't listed as savings because we're not sure how to project those things. But they are real things that probably need to be considered. Okay, the pros, I'm not going to go through each one of those. You understand that when we build between the buildings there, you got a brand new competition gym. But what I would do is tell you that if we go with scenario 5, now you reduce the size of that elementary. Because in the other scenarios, you had a really big gym. You don't need that big gym now because you've got a different new gym that's the competition gym for the high school. Now, this still doesn't include a brand new auditorium. So we're still renovating that old elementary into a middle school so that you can still have a nice auditorium. As you look at the pros there, the thing I guess you got to notice is the pros keep going up. Oh, let me go back and look at that spreadsheet, and in scenario 5, we added a wrestling room. $325,000 to add a wrestling room. And that added wrestling room would go, okay, so where our high school gym is right now, if you go out the north doors, it would be just to the east of that. And that's $325,000 to construct a wrestling room. But then, now you've got all your athletes, your winter athletes, boys basketball, girls basketballs, wrestlers, that have great facilities on one site. And that's the first scenario where we've gotten those mats out of the elementary auditorium. So, scenario 5, back to the pros and the cons. Again, the pros keep going up and the cons keep going down. A large con on the scenario 5, the cook site's closed. And if you want to keep this thing from the roof falling down, you do have to have maintenance. So you've got some maintenance. But that would be a negative component of keeping this thing going. And then, of course, one of the downsides is the cost of all the upgrades, renovations, and new construction. Other questions on scenario 5? Okay, scenario 6. Here's one that we tear down the old elementary. So now the demolition costs become involved. And you see a number in there, I think $125,000 or something like that. The 5-year savings, $1.179 million. But this is the thing that allows you access to the best of new construction for both the middle school and high school. And the way that Russ constructed the numbers here, you could make this into a new high school with the new building. And what we have right now for the high school, make that your middle school. I mean, there'd be a lot of different options that you could do. Russ, you want to talk about that at all?
Once you tear down the old elementary and you're adding out towards that, where that was, you're making that connection. Now you're using that full amount of space for whatever you want to make it. The dollar amount's there, so all you do is you put your high school program into that amount of space. The old high school can make a middle school. It's classrooms. You've got everything there. So it doesn't matter. Space is space. Middle school kids, and I was a junior high teacher. You've got classrooms. It's where you want to place your teachers. It's when you're in the design phase. That's what you've got to decide. And I'm not a designer by any means, but I've taught at the high school, I've taught at junior high. You need classrooms, and you just need to make sure that when you get your people on board, that you talk through how you can make those spaces work. But I can tell you, once you get a teacher in a classroom and they're on board, you just need the space. And when you're designing, you get your teachers on board so that they can get some input. And once that happens, you give them the space, they'll make it happen. Fremont's done a lot of construction. I help North Bend with their projects. I'm working with Tecumseh right now on some projects. I've worked down in Missouri. I've worked over in Iowa. I worked down in Kansas. And they've taken some old high schools and put middle schools in them, taken high schools, put elementaries in them. Space is space. It's once you get the teachers on board and the principals to help with the programming, and everybody will make it work, the community and the kids. And again, what it really gets down to is what's best for the kids. And that's when things really gel. And I know it's money, it always hurts. But when you get it all going and when you see the end results, that's when it's really great. The teachers feel great about it. The kids feel great about it. And it's time. I mean, even 20 years, this place is starting to show its age too. And after talking with the guy that's overseeing your maintenance here, when this roof is leaking in all rooms except a couple, it's time. And that's why you're spending $250,000 on this. And it's going to continue to do that. Buildings do that. So schools are never ending. I mean, you pay for them. So, but space is space. Sorry, I took a little longer on that one.
Okay, we really, I mean, we've kind of gone through, question, where's it at? I'm sorry.
Your new wrestling room on scenario 5?
Yes.
What's the size of that?
It's between 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. It's just a flat slab block.
What's this?
Oh, this is it's a 90 by 100, so it's 9,000 square feet. It's double, triple what that wrestling room would need. It's just a wrestling practice room. The meets would still be in the gyms, the new competition gym or the old competition gym. This is just a practice room. This is not a competition wrestling room. It's just where they roll the mats out and they have the practice.
So where does the cost of that gym come in?
That's in the additional 24,000. It says addition between high school and elementary. That's part of that 4,537,000.
Which scenario are you in?
Oh, I'm on scenario number 6.
6?
Yes, sir.
Which one do you want to look at?
You want 5 or 6?
Go back to 6.
6.
Yeah, 6 is the one where you see 4,537,500. That's the addition between those places. Now, down at the bottom, you see the last line on scenario 6, aesthetics and wrestling room, $700,000. So that $325,000 for a wrestling room is still into scenario 6. But in addition, there's some aesthetic improvements that we would be doing in that high school.
Some parking lot and some things on the outside. It was included in $700,000.
So the only two scenarios that address improving the wrestling room facilities, 5 and 6. Outside of that, we're going over to the elementary auditorium. Now, currently, we're using the old gym, the old cook gym. We got our wrestling mats over there. But when we have a meet, we bring them in here. And that would be still the typical thing we would do for a competition. We would wrestle, we'd practice in the practice room, and then bring them out into competition gym.
Well, I guess I'm still back on where the larger gym is listed here.
Okay, and that's scenario 5? Oh, 6, okay, go ahead. And what's the question?
What's the amount?
Oh, $24,552,225.
Oh. That's actually an addition. The gym is in between the existing high school and the elementary.
So where is it listed?
Okay, it's just not the gym alone. It also includes a front entry that is a secure entry that's got administrative offices, locker rooms.
Where is it?
Okay, it is the 24,000 square foot addition, and it says addition for middle school and high school. And that's the one that comes in at $4,537,500.
I think I understand what you're saying. That number we have, $4,537,000, we need to be a little more descriptive about exactly what that is. Now, I can tell you that's, I think, how many classrooms?
That one has about 4 classrooms on top of, including a gym, locker rooms, and some offices.
But now this scenario also has something that we haven't talked about yet. It provides elevator access to both the high school and, well, in this one, it provides elevator access to the top floors. Right now, we don't have that. We have the chair that you ride up, but and the elevator shaft that's there can't be used because it doesn't meet code. So this is really the first scenario that addresses an elevator issue. But that's all a part of that $4,500,000.
Until we get your drawings, what this is built off is square footage, and it would include gyms, classrooms, offices, locker rooms, bathrooms. It was just general space, and that was with the help of architects that said if you had a gym. So if you're asking what a gym would cost, just to break out a competition gym, those usually cost $2 to $2.2 million with floor height and all the things that go with the gym. That's what the going rate of a gym is in today's world. Capacity is usually about, for that size of gym, 700 to 800. And that's at a year or two ago cost. I've been talking to architects, and they're getting squeamish right now because of what has happened with these floods. They're starting to talk about adding 3%, 5%. They don't know yet now because with everything that has just really happened, their numbers are starting to scare me a little bit. So when I put those numbers out, start putting maybe a 5% contingent upon it for me, which is because I'm not a professional estimator. I'm a consultant that talks to the consultants, and I'm trying to make sure that I give you your money's worth. But I'm working with a school that we're looking at doing a gym, and we're talking 2 to 2.2 million for 700 capacity, and I think that's what you'd be looking at. And we built a gym over in Fremont, 700 capacity, for about 1.5 just 5 years ago. So it's just skyrocketed in cost. And that's because of all the stuff happening in Omaha and Lincoln. It's just, everything is just really, really going. All those schools are building. It's crazy right now. It really is.
Okay, any other questions? about any of the scenarios? I remember I told you when you came in, we're going to do a little survey.
Question over here.
Oh, question over here.
I guess I just want to clarify in my own mind, and maybe other people have the same question. So on your initial thing, when you talked about no bond and then, which scenarios you like, is a no bond like not really represented here? Or is the no bond even this first scenario with the $5 million with replacing lighting and all of that kind of stuff?
Well, we debated about how to word that. No bond means $0 towards putting into the future for the most part. So it's like zero, which would require no bond at all.
Kind of a scenario that's not here.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
these are all something that would require a bond.
Well, to tell you the truth, here's the deal. We're not going to talk about funding tonight. We're talking about the costs of these things. On that particular question, it is related to a bond. But some of those upgrades, you got a couple in there for $195,000. You could do that through your building fund. There are some mechanisms available. And by the way, we're pretty sure that Johnson County Central would qualify for a lease purchase program that would give us a really good rate, not as good a rate as if you would get if you were selling bonds, but a lease purchase program that could spread a payment out over 20 years or so for some of the items that we're talking about. And the reason that we would qualify is because we would be showing efficiency gains. So if you reduce your personnel, if you upgrade the HVAC stuff, if you buy the lights, those are all considered efficiency gains. So we haven't even talked about this at the board level about how it would happen. But for something on those upgrade items, yes, there could potentially be other ways to purchase those things.
Okay, and then that's my second question, and I just don't know enough about it, I guess. And you mentioned not discussing funding, but I think that's everybody's fear. I mean, as a landowner, and a large percentage of your constituents here are landowners, and they carry the brunt of your school tax. What is this in real dollars? I mean, if you're looking at a $5 million bond versus a $20 million, what is that going to do to my taxes? What is there a percentage to associate with that?
Yes.
Because I think that's the real question
Sure.
that everybody has.
Sure,
Doesn't want a new facility, but do I not put my kids in college because I'm going to build a school for all the other kids? It's real world dollars.
yes. And to tell you the truth, I understand that. That, quite frankly, is another 2 or 3 hour discussion about what we would do. At our last board meeting, we decided we wanted to pursue the costs associated with different scenarios. So when we came to the April board meeting, that's what we talked about. To tell you the truth, we didn't talk about any financing. We also didn't talk about when we would implement something like this. Now, when we get to the point of if we would be implementing something, that's when what does that mean on a levy? What does that mean to my personal taxes? That's when we start needing to have that kind of information. So we're just not there yet, but we do have what I believe, what I know is the best information we can have on costs.
And I appreciate that. I think it's really hard, though, to ask people to make a vote on a $24 million project without some kind of knowledge. I think it's hard to ask people to sit here tonight and make that kind of I'd be willing to support this when you have no idea what it's actually going to do to your finances. I think maybe you've got the cart in front of the horse in some respects, because you have such a large population of people, honestly, that don't even have children that go to school here. I mean, you
Fair
have
point.
a ton of people that are paying taxes here that you're going to ask to support this.
Fair point.
That don't have kids, they haven't had kids here in 60 years. I mean, our landlord, hasn't, she hasn't been here for 75 years.
Sure.
And she's still going to support your school. So I think,
Sure.
I think it's hard to ask somebody to say, oh, well, I'd be willing to support even one of the smaller ones, when you're not going to give them any kind of information about what that is going to do to them personally.
Tonight, for the information that I think we can give our Board of Education, we're going to be limited to the scenarios. Which scenario is the best scenario? Now, so the fact that question number 2 might not have as much meaning as what's it going to do to my taxes, I think that's a fair point. But questions 1, 3, and 4, each one of those questions has a very significant effect on what happens then with trying to get to how much taxes. And to tell you the truth, I guess I still believe that question number 2. So if you tell us, you know what, 10 million is as much as we can support. Now we know we got to work backwards. We got to eliminate a few things. Maybe we got to pull a new scenario. I mean, we came up with 6 right now, but there are other things you can look at. Just eliminating the equipment aspects, eliminating the career academy.
Maybe I'm missing it, but how are we supposed to know if we could support a $10 million thing if we don't know what it's going to do to us personally or to all of the people, like my landlord, she's like, go to that meeting and find out, because what am I, it's going to happen one way or the other. She has no say in it. She's going to live here, so she's going to get to vote.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people here, so how am I supposed to make that judgment? Yes, I'd be willing to, go up to this 10 million. I'm going to say no, I'm not going to support any of it.
That's perfect.
But because I don't know what it's going to do to me. I don't know what it's going to do to my family. I don't know what it's going to do to my,
Your best information then can be with questions 1, 3, and 4.
In the next informational meeting, I would strongly encourage you, a man who is numbers are very important to you.
Sure.
Numbers are very important to all of us as well. I think Sue was addressing that. We have numbers that we have not heard about yet. I strongly encourage you to do a feasibility study with the county and the state assessor, and also with the county commissioners, and decide what is available in tax funding. And then also keep in mind the trends that support the tax structure for the schools. Such as declining land devaluations and declining population and declining number of children. And I think there's something, a small segment to the side. The children aren't staying in this community. I watched my own children leave because there's no place that they can work that will pay them a living wage. If my children have that trouble, I'm imagining a lot of other people have that trouble, that their children have that trouble, and they themselves may have that trouble. Those things really need to be addressed before anybody can make a decision about what you're addressing tonight. We must count the cost. Those of us who do business, those of us who pay our own bills, we must always address that daily. And you have not addressed that yet.
Okay.
I really strongly encourage that you address that, because we cannot make any decision, because y'all be spending money that belongs to somebody else.
Well said. Please understand, ain't no decisions going to be made here tonight. This is feedback. This is simply information that we'll get to the Board of Education, let them try to determine when's the next best time to have a meeting in which we include those valuations. But when we do that, we need to have probably one scenario we're talking about rather than 6 or 10 or 3. We need something to focus in on that says this is what we have. Now again, all of our Board of Education is here. Our Board of Education is going to be the ones that drive this. So ultimately, as we think about, well, what should we do now? Because obviously, we have to be good stewards. We have to take into consideration how much can our community afford? How much can our community bear? Something that I also want to make sure this group understands, how long do our children have to wait? So we have a school that everyone needs to be very proud of. Our school is something to take great pride in. I want everybody to think about how proud you are of the facilities. I walk into my office every day, and to tell you the truth, when I have a visitor, I ask visitors, what's the first word that comes to your mind when you see this office? And I can't tell you some of the things that they say. That's what we see. I mean, that's what our community see. That's what someone who wants to start a business in our community or try to sell a home, what's the school like? So I guess I come from a standpoint of I'm here for a couple years, and the notion that when John takes over, these are tough discussion items, and these are good discussion items. But I go back to our kids. We do these things for our children. So how much can our community bear is one way to look at it, but please look at it. How long do our students wait for a school that they deserve? I'm sorry, I'm getting on more of a personal opinion now. Yes, comment over here.
You know, I think it's good that we're having this conversation. It's being upfront. This conversation hasn't been had in Tecumseh since I think there was a bond that tried to pass in 96.
Hey, can I interrupt you a second? When you go out, take a look at the architecture drawing that's over here. That is a drawing that is the perfect scenario number 5. That's the drawing that he's talking about, 1996. That was talked about in 1996 to build. It didn't happen. So in 96, you were talking about the same things that we're talking about right now. So the question becomes, how long do kids have to wait? In 96, it was put in by Tom Rother and was discussed as a community. We decided that the time wasn't right, so here we are. So I'm sorry to interrupt that, but that's what that drawing is of the 96 that you're talking about.
And these conversations that you guys are having with the scenarios, it gives them a direction. And that's the way I look at it. And it's 24 million is a big number. We are a farm community. There's stuff going through, hopefully through legislature, that's going to relieve some of that. The tax burden that's on them people is unreal. But I think if I remember right, that 96 was 2.6 million, I think was back then. Now we're looking at $24 million. So are we going to be at a point where we're forced to do something and just to try to maintain status quo? Or are we going to maybe try to look in the future and try to look at some of these scenarios and see if we can maybe reduce some of them costs? You know, if we wait 5 years, I would hate to see what this number would be right now.
I think Russ said 3% every year. You can pretty much figure 3% every year.
So, do I think we need a brand new state-of-the-art facility? I would love that. I think it'd be great. I think it would attract people to this community. We have people people, we have family members, we have friends that have walked in and just looked at, when you say, looked at your office even. So there's some high points. We have some great teachers. You know, you start looking at our education. Our education's some of the top. You can compare it to Johnson Rock, you can compare it to Freeman. These communities that are around us, we're right at, if not above, or just right below. So, you know, I think there's a lot of good numbers here. Gives you an idea. Obviously, there's some tax burdens along with that, in whatever direction they go. That'll be, I think, a great direction. So, thank you.
Okay, other comments? Okay, let's take a survey. Now, we're going to try something. We did it last night, and it kind of worked good. How many of you have a smartphone that you know how to use or will use? If you do, Karen, come on, let's get going here. We're going to try to take some information on these 4 questions. If you don't have that, we have paper and pencil. So if you need paper and pencil, just raise a hand. We'll get a survey, a paper survey to you. But if you have a smartphone, I recently went to a workshop in which they were talking about the capability of technology, and it was called Freaky Fast Feedback. And Karen's going to get us on a website here that have the 4 questions, and all you got to do is pick one of them. Second question, pick your item. Third and fourth right down the line, and hit submit. And the results are going to show up on the screen. So before you all leave tonight, we're going to see the results. And not only that, we're going to see the results from last night's information meeting at the Tecumseh Site. So, Karen, you want to kind of explain here?
This is the website, so menti.com. It'll ask you for a code. You'll enter those 6 digits, and then the questions will pop up.
And with your paper and pencil, just fold it once. We'll have, Rick, you got that box to put in? Okay. Fold it, and then what we'll do, we'll take your paper and pencil results, we'll get them to our kids that are here to help us, and then they will enter the information. It shows up.
It's up here on the top, 870041. Okay, so the website is menti.com, MENTI.com. And the code, when you get there, the code that you enter is 870041. 870041.
Every time somebody submits something, that number grows by 1. So if you're a teacher in the classroom, you can use this information, getting quick, give a quick little quiz and you know you got 22 kids, so you say, okay, kids, here, go. When you see that thing gets to 22, you know everybody's taking it, and all of a sudden you hit a button and you see all the results. So what we're going to see, not by identifying who voted for what, but we'll see the results of how many voted for each one of these things. We'll give our kids just a few minutes to enter the paper and pencil results. We ran into a few more practices, I think, tonight. We're practicing for the musical, and we had several more kids lined up, but they're busy doing a lot of stuff. So very thankful for the gang that showed up tonight to help. We're close. Okay. Is that it? We got 38 responses. So, are we ready? Let's see what you said. Okay. 24 of the participants here said we should go to one site. 14 indicated we should maintain the 2 sites. Question number 2. What would you support in regards to a dollar amount? 9 said no bond. 2 said 5 million. 2 said 10 million. 3 said 15 million. And 19 said 20 million. Okay, question number 3. This is the one that is, which scenario makes the most sense? 10 here in Cook said scenario 1. 1 said scenario 3. 1 said scenario 4. 4 said scenario 5. And 18 said scenario 6. And then finally, which scenario makes the least sense? 19 said scenario 1, 3 scenario 2, 1 scenario 3, 3 scenario 4, 1 scenario 5, and 8 scenario 6. Okay, that becomes information that goes to the Board of Education and helps to kind of think a little bit, well, what do we do next? Can we see the Tecumseh results from last night?
I can show you the spreadsheets when I shared with you. You want to see that?
Yeah, that's good. That's good enough. We've got a spreadsheet that was the final results from last night as well. And what do we have, 42 at Tecumseh? Go. Sorry.
Because I was doing some senior photos and I didn't think the seniors probably wanted me to share some of that stuff.
Oh, hey, hang on, Karen. I think I have that because you sent that to me. Oh, okay. Okay, this is the results from the Tecumseh site. In question 1, how much did the savings balance out? So the one site choice was selected by 37 people at Tecumseh, and 5 wanted to maintain 2 sites. In question number 2, the maximum dollar amount you would support, the zero bond or no bond, there were 6 people that said no bond. 1 at 5 million, 10 at 5, 1 at 5 million, 1 at 10 million, 5 at 15 million, and 29 at 20 million. Question 3, which one makes the most sense? Which scenario? 4 said choice scenario 1, and this is the most sense. 0 said 2, 2 said 3, 4 said 4, 9 people said scenario 5 made the most sense. 23 people said scenario 6 made the most sense. And finally, which one makes the least sense? Scenario 1 was chosen by 34 of the people. Scenario 2 by 2. Scenario 3 by 1. None for 4 and 5. And 5 said scenario 6 made the least sense. So, that's the results of the information. Now, we can't leave here without acknowledging this doesn't come complete with what it costs individual taxpayers on a certain scenario, and that is information that would have to come forward before we would do any kind of next step. So, I think when we started, we always had the notion that we were just trying to find out, is there a need or not? Whether or not we had a need. And I know that many of those discussions went right away to what's it going to cost. And that's the natural thing to do. Then, of course, we moved to, well, what are the costs associated? And that's what we did tonight. So, from there on, it becomes, all right, which one of these things do we actually want to do? When do we want to do it? We know a couple of things. The longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. We don't know several things. Our legislature is debating a few bills right now, and that could have a major impact. So, I think that it's prudent to kind of see how things play out a little bit. I don't think you'll see this board making a decision next month to put a ballot on the initiative. But the discussions we are having is a process that's been great to know what you're thinking. And it's very evident that many people think a variety of ways on these subjects. So it's hard stuff. I mean, it is just hard stuff. But you can't make good decisions without good information, and that's what we're getting from you. So, I got no other reason to prolong the evening. I guess I would ask any of our board members if you have any comment you'd like to make, anything to say at all. Rick, you got your, and maybe I don't want to put any board member on the spot to say something, but if you want to say something, you know, it's time to go home. Or, Kim, you want to say something?
Just thank you for coming, taking time out of your evening to come.
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming. Drive safely on the way home.